Hello, everyone. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, thank you for being here. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to this roundtable on strengthening research, policy, and capacity ecosystems. We'd love to know where you're joining us from, so please use the chat box to introduce yourselves. And we do have a little activity planned to kick off this session. You can share your thoughts on this question via Mentimeter. The question we have for the audience is, what's one word or phrase that comes to mind when you think about the future of data for policy and action? You can use the QR code on the screen or the link in the chat to respond to that question. What we'll do is we'll turn your responses into a word cloud and we'll share that at the end of the session. So please give it some thought, don't be shy, and share your thoughts with us. And yeah, Nathan, if you can stay on the slide for a little bit, just so everyone has time to scan the QR code. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our co-organizers, the European Commission Joint Research Center, the Maldives Bureau of Statistics, and the Permanent Mission of the Republic of the Maldives. I should also probably introduce myself as well. I am Mariam Rabi. I direct SDGs Today at the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. We are a program that aims to advance the production and use of timely and non-traditional data for sustainable development. And we contribute to that objective through various training and educational programs, research, and different global data initiatives. You can explore some of our work on our website, and my colleagues will share a link in the chat. Today's discussion comes at a critical time of change, accelerating technological advancements, shifting funding landscapes, a growing demand for sustainable and actionable solutions, and intensifying environmental, social, and economic crises are just a few items on the list. And in this context, strengthening the connections between data, both production and use, research, policymaking, and capacity building becomes essential. So this roundtable is an opportunity to find ways to deepen that connection and also explore solutions that are grounded in evidence and supported by collaboration and built to make impact. So we'll hear from different sectors and highlight different practical steps, but also challenges that we can learn from to help us move forward. And before we get started, I thought I would just share two examples of work that we're doing to try to contribute to that objective as well. One initiative that I quickly want to highlight is Data for Now. So alongside our co-partners, which you can see on the screen, we support countries in strengthening their data ecosystems using innovative methodologies, tailored capacity building programs, and diverse partnerships. We have a series of reports and programs that we have hosted that you can explore on our website. The next example of work that I wanted to quickly share is the work that we're doing with the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, which demonstrates how data can guide planning and decision-making even under the most horrific circumstances. Their effort to collect data and publish data during the war has shown the critical role of timely data in understanding the impact of war, but also how that can support response efforts and build resilience. Again, you can find this report and all the data that they're working on our website. But today's session is not about showcasing the work that we do. It's about learning from each other and how we can translate evidence into action and build stronger systems together and ensure that policies that we shape are rooted in the real needs of our communities. So thank you again for joining us. I'm now delighted to hand over to our esteemed keynote speaker, Dr. Mark Dowell. He is the lead for scientific and technical support to the Copernicus program at the European Commission Joint Research Center and is responsible for leading the European Commission Knowledge Center on Earth Observation. Dr. Dowell, thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mariam. And I'm going to share my screen as I have a few slides to show everyone this afternoon. If someone could just confirm when this comes up, you can see everything.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from what I see in the chat to all of you. As Mariam said, I work and lead this knowledge center on Earth observation. And I say that again, just to point out that I'm going to be passing some messages to you in this short intervention. And they come from my perspective, of course, of working on this knowledge center, which is really about ensuring the uptake of Earth observation in EU policymaking. So I have that European perspective, and I have a bit the perspective from an Earth observation point of view. But I do think that some of the points I'll make are more generally applicable, or at least I hope so. So, as I said, Earth observations, which provide really a myriad of data that we can take advantage of in the type of work and topics that we're discussing today. This is really coming of age now. I mean, there are obviously Earth observation satellites going back 40, 50 years, but it's really, as you can see from this graph here, over the last decade that there's been a rapid increase of the Earth observation constellation to a point now where we have almost 1,400 Earth observation satellites in orbit. On the right-hand side there, you see kind of the European contribution to this, both from the investments made by the European Space Agency directly, but most significantly, I think the input provided by the Copernicus program, and that's where a lot of my work is centered around. And then on the right-hand side there, you see the meteorological constellation. But I didn't want to talk to you so much about that data. The raw data is, of course, important. Without it, we wouldn't be able to drive all of the derived products that we need and depend on. But I kind of want to see how, through the work we do in the Knowledge Center, how this kind of really fits into this support to policy. In my mind, there are kind of three broad areas that we've seen over the last years since we started the work of the Knowledge Center, really having a driving kind of key interest in decision-making and policy for the uptake of Earth observation and data in general. First of all, on the policy side itself. So just to give you some statistics, in the previous 5 years, or 5 years from 2014 to 2019, there were 11 references to Copernicus and Earth observation in official legislation of the European Union. And in the last 5 years, from 2020 to 25, there are 89 references. So this really demonstrates both the maturity of the programs and the products, but also the interest and the know-how in understanding how Earth observation can support their policy making for the individual ministries and directorates general of the European Commission. The second point is, I think we've often thought of Earth observation in contributing to the monitoring of various policies and things like this. But what we're increasingly see is how the policymakers are interested in using Earth observation data all throughout the policy cycle, from anticipating policies and formulating them, defining reference conditions and things like this, all the way through to policy evaluation, which I think is really where we will see an important change in how Earth observation is used in the future. And finally, the indicators. I know many of you work on the Sustainable Development Goals. The indicator link there is very clear, but I think there are indicators as well across all different types of policy and decision making, and to structure how Earth observation supports this is very important. The official statistics communities, the NSOs and others, are really taking on board in recent years the use of Earth observation in the development of official statistics. In Europe, for example, there was the Warsaw Memorandum a few years ago that really incentivized that community to make better use of Earth observation in their work. Another key point for me is really to better characterize the value chain and understand how the original raw products that are available are traced through to develop specific applications and services, ultimately to how they feed into the decision-making process. And this not only provides more clearer traceability to how that data is being produced and derived, but it also helps us to justify the investments we need to make on the observation systems and on the data production aspects if we can illustrate to people really how this is done. Here you see some examples from a recent assessment that we made on urban climate adaptation. And you can see, for example, on the right-hand figure there, that these value chains are not always as straightforward as we think, especially in the context where you have risk indicators addressing different aspects of the risk cycle. And so we need to, as I said, have a structured approach to how we address this kind of value chain implementation. I think one major change in the last 5 to 6 years has really become the availability of what I would consider to be global products that is now available at actionable scales. In the past, global products were available at much coarser resolutions. Now we're having products that are available at 10, 20 meter resolution globally, which means that we have that global perspective of interoperable data, but at the same time, we have data at actionable scales that can be used in local applications and support action. Here you can see 4 examples addressing 4 different areas of the Sustainable Development Goals. The Global Surface Water Explorer product on the top left-hand side, Land Productivity Dynamics, which is supporting SDG 15. The Global Human Settlement Layer products, which is supporting SDG 11, and products on addressing food security, which is addressing SDG 2. And all of these products, as I said, are globally available, but also at a resolution that allows local implementation and action. Now I'd like to look at those datasets from 2 points of view. I take the example here of that Global Human Settlement Layer products. And you can see, first of all, that this is one data set or one data collection, as it were, that is addressing many different applications, both in the context of SDG 11, where it addresses, there are different products for different indicators within those targets, but at the same time, it also addresses issues such as the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework, the CBD, the Convention on Biodiversity. You see in the bottom left-hand corner there a map of the Virunga Park with and the protected area that's surrounding that, so that allows that for that type of analysis as well. But what's important is this data is not only made publicly available, but we're also using it to build up relations with the communities in the different areas. This is implementing the degree of urbanization through open tools and capacity building efforts. And Michele, who will be leading the panel afterwards, is heavily involved in this activity. And here we really work with the different stakeholders in different countries, now up to 100 countries, to co-create their own plans, national plans for adaptation and building a strong basis for them to be able to report on degree of urbanization. And then the second aspect, so that was one data set, many uses. This is now how we bring together multiple data sets and products to address a single application area. Within Copernicus, we have this idea of the thematic hubs addressing a specific thematic capability. And you can see here for coastal areas, all of the different Copernicus areas, services for marine, climate, land, emergency, and atmosphere, bringing together their data sets and competences to fuel a single community and a single application area in building up specific applications to support that community. And then in concluding, I'd like to kind of present, in my mind, what is the kind of a recipe, the components of these Earth observation programs that are required to really stimulate and advance the use in policymaking and providing the underpinning evidence for that. First of all, and Copernicus ticks all of these boxes, basically. First of all, these programs are user and policy driven. They also provide a long-term and sustained commitment. And that's important if people are going to work these data sets into their work streams for reporting or things like this. They don't want the data to be turned off in a year. They want to have a sustained commitment for the future. And thirdly, the data is covered by a full, free, and open data policy, of course, that allows us to use, reuse, redistribute the data to different user communities. And we collaborate globally. Although these programs are national or regional, there's a global and strong international collaboration and standards that are established. There's also operational data production and service delivery, which means that users can depend on having an interface to real human beings and get feedback. And there's a broad cross-domain product portfolio. I showed this in the example given on coastal. But significantly, these programs can't be static. They need to evolve and adapt to new needs and requirements and be responsive to new technologies. As I said, I think in Copernicus, these ambitions are being met. And there are many other global programs and regional programs that are doing this. But I see these really as the key elements that will help us sustain these activities into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insightful intervention and for leaving us with a very actionable recipe and for highlighting a very actionable data products and how that has impacted the various work that you do across the world. Thank you for helping us set the scene for the panel discussion. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Michele, who will facilitate the discussion segment of this event. Over to you, Michele.
Thank you, Mariam. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon from myself as well. I'm very happy to welcome panelists to this event, Ms. Aishat Shahunda, Chief Statistician of the National Bureau of Statistics, the Republic of Maldives, Professor Lin Lu of the International Research Center of Big Data for Sustainable Development Goals, Martin Clark, Urban Resilience Coordinator at Group on Earth Observation Secretariat, and to Professor Ngozi Odiaka, Director of Sustainable Development Solution Network, Nigeria. I kindly ask the panelists to keep their intervention to 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask the first question on the topic of AI to Ms. Aishat. So many research initiatives, especially those leveraging open data, geospatial technology, and AI, produce high quality and disaggregated data, but they are making also an effort for this evidence to be accessible, actionable, and tailored for policymakers and communities. Please share your views with us around those topics.
Well, thank you very much. The next item is to take the announcement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'll just highlight some areas of work with regard to the geospatial technologies that we have undertaken recently in the Maldives in this respect. It was using Earth observation data, and we were trying to develop the land cover changes and land accounts for some of the islands in the Maldives. Using several open source spatial data sets, like it was highlighted before, we were able to access and download free of cost from the websites of data providers. But in the case of Maldives, we were able to get some insights into the vegetation and land cover changes using these freely available like data sets. Because we found that some of the results were not conclusive for several areas because of the limitations in the data resolution and the complexity of our local environments. Because we have a very small surface area in our islands, the the experimentation work, we found that we needed to secure higher quality, higher resolution data that to scale up the work, which was a bit expensive for the Bureau of Statistics at the moment. So we are trying to work together with other agencies like the environment and the spatial agency to try and have some sort of a collaborative approach to secure these more higher resolution data to scale up this work. We do face issues with like costs of higher licensing, like for softwares like ArcGIS and things. So there are some limitations in the case of like smaller countries without sustainable like financing for this type of work. So what we are trying to do mostly is using the short-term projects and funds and consultancies that we are able to get to our development partners to try and experiment these research initiatives. But however, like it was highlighted before, we need a high policy priority and a long-term investment in such a local technical capacity if we are to scale up these efforts and make it more usable and sustainable. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for providing this interesting perspective. Let's move now to China, to Lin, to ask, how are you ensuring that research initiatives, especially those leveraging open data, geospatial technologies, and AI, are not only producing high quality and disaggregated data, but also making this evidence accessible, actionable, and tailored for policymakers and communities?
Thank you, Michelle. At CBAS, we tackle these challenges through a three-pillar approach. First, we build open data infrastructure. We developed platforms like the SDG Big Data Platform. And this platform hosts over 10 petabytes of Earth observation data, environmental data, and socioeconomic data to ensure interoperable data sets. And these data sets, we think, are essential for the tracking SDG indicators effectively. And second, we create policy-ready tools. For example, we integrated satellite imagery with socioeconomic statistics to produce localized SDG dashboards. And several municipalities across China, they have already integrated these assessment findings to refine their urban planning and infrastructure development strategies. And also, we build capacity through partnerships with our international collaborators. We train policymakers and also officials applying geospatial AI tools, enabling them to leverage satellite data and AI models for SDG monitoring and assessment. That's our experience. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Lin. Great. We move now to Geneva, to Martin, for a question like, can we trust AI, geospatial technologies, and Earth observation to derive equitable and inclusive policymaking, especially in data-sparse regions?
Thanks, Michela. It feels like a very topical question. This issue of trust and AI seems to be all the world is talking about at the moment. I think the short answer is it's clearly not going to be a magic bullet or a panacea to, or a shortcut, if you like, to equitable and inclusive policy making. Kind of thinking about some of the comments Mark made. So GEO's whole purpose really is about facilitating access, open access to free, trusted data derived from Earth observations, and increasingly, well, historically through machine learning and increasingly through AI type models. But I think it would be fair to say that just providing the data, the information, the knowledge doesn't necessarily result in equitable and inclusive policy or decision making. There are a whole range of other reasons why, if you like, that this may constrain our ability to include all sorts of stakeholders and beneficiaries in the policy or decision making process. I think the other thing to say is that there sort of continues to be this kind of trust gap, if you like, or deficit in Earth observation, geospatial technologies, and certainly the people that stand to benefit from the most vulnerable communities are often those without access, and equally their insight, their information, their knowledge isn't routinely incorporated into these kind of sort of higher tech applications of data and information. So, I mean, GEO's approach to this, like trying to ensure more inclusive and equitable policy and decision making, is through a number of kind of approaches in supporting countries, national governments, local governments to understand what some of these barriers are, that it's not just about having the technology, the data, and access to that, and trying to ensure that there is this kind of marriage between technological solutions to inform policies and policy making, and some of the sort of more traditional and indigenous knowledge-based systems. Good example of that actually is some support that we've beginning to provide to the Maldives around mapping ecosystem extent, and that ultimately is being done leveraging Earth observations, data and information, but involving local stakeholders in validating what the models are showing, and also ensuring that there is very strong local ownership of what that data is showing, and trying to drive the use of that evidence in policy making. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Let's now move to Nigeria, I guess, with Ngozi, to ask what strategies have been most effective in fostering collaboration between researchers, policymakers, and practitioners to drive the SDG progress. You're on mute still. Let's see if we can unmute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, that's now great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, with regards to Nigeria and the strategies that we are offering, I think I want to begin to say that in Nigeria, several strategies have proven effective in fostering collaboration between researchers, policymakers, and practitioners to advance progress on the sustainable developments. Yes, if we want to look at it, you discover that these efforts that are being made vary in structure, and they also vary in scale. But the most successful ones share a focus on multi-stakeholder engagement, data accessibility, and also capacity building. It even goes into policy integration. So the first is like establishment of national SDG frameworks and coordination platform. And a typical example of that is from the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs. That's what we call OSAP. And how does it work? The office actually coordinates SDG implementation and brings about data produced together by the NBS, the ministries, the academia, the CSOs, and the private sectors. They are really very effective because it has enabled both vertical and horizontal collaboration that is between the federal and the state and also across sectors. For example, the OSAP SDGs supports integration of SDGs into Nigerians' national development plans and works very closely with research institutes to localize indicators. Secondly, the national and state level data partnerships also. And a typical example is also the Nigerian SDG Indicator Baseline Report, which was developed by NBS in collaboration with UN agencies and research experts. Again, we also have the Policy Research Interface Forum and Dialogues. This is actually from the Nigerian Governors Forum and the Nigerian Health Watch. We have seen that they have been able to have platforms that bring together policymakers and academia, civil societies, and they discuss evidence and recommendations on SDG-related targets. And the results, of course, we have very good results coming from them. The fourth is the academia engagement through the SDG research clusters and networks. And a typical example of this is the SDSN Nigeria. This network actually links researchers, the universities, and also think tanks across the country to SDG themes and aligns research outputs. This has been effective because it provides a kind of hub for evidence sharing and supports the development of data tools. The fifth is embedded technical assistance and capacity building. Example of such is the UNDP Accelerator Labs and also the National Youth Service Corps. These initiatives actually train youths and technical experts within local governments and communities. And of course, it really strengthens community engagement. And the sixth is the fact that the use of technology and open data platform is also there, particularly from the Open Data Nigeria and the NBS, that's the Microlab library. And these have had a lot of impact. And then I think my final thoughts on that is the fact that, one, there's co-creation rather than top-down policy or research imposition. Secondly, it enables data democratization, that's having an open access and usability. And the third thought of mine is that it has built institutional trust and, of course, continuity. And there's focus on practical, localized application of research. And I will say that more institutionalized knowledge transfer mechanisms should be on board, of course, with joint advisory boards, sustained funding for research policy translations, and also monitoring systems to track how research actually informs the policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ngozi, for this perspective. I will maintain the same focus for Aishat and ask again what strategies have truly been most effective, maybe in the Maldives, in fostering meaningful collaboration between researchers, policymakers, and practitioners to drive the SDG progress.
Thank you. In the case of Maldives, what we try to do is we reach out to our relevant institutions within the government, and we try to collaborate and try to work together towards some sort of a common objective, so that we find that in building staff and institutional capacity among all relevant agencies is something that most agencies need. So that's a very good area to start with, to together build capacity. So we try to develop a roadmap for environmental economic statistics in the country recently, given the area of environmental indicators. It's very important for our country in the SDGs, but it's a very weak area. So we have now developed a roadmap together with Environment and the Tourism Ministry, and then it's something that we have signed together, and it was developed with support and partnership with international agencies, also with academia, NGOs, private sector, and so we have this joint work plan that has identifies who is going to do what, and then how we are going to implement this. But of course, regular coordination through working groups, follow-up is really critical to ensure that it's a successful implementation of the roadmap. So this is something that we have implemented, and we think it works very well. And for the Maldives, we have included in the NSDs, we have prioritized the SDG indicators in close collaboration with the stakeholders. So we have in the NX, we have identified the areas which is high priority, and then try to work together with other agencies to try and work on these indicators. And one of the other thing is we have developed this partnership with the Maldives National University, because we don't have still degree level training even in the statistics available in the country. So now we have developed a statistics degree course, and it's going to be catered for the national statistical system to get more people engaged in this type of data literacy, statistical literacy, to try and build more research capacity in the country. So thank you for this. I'll just end here.
Thank you, Aishat. I'll address the next question to Lin about how can we better integrate open data, geospatial, and AI technology into international, national, and local policy frameworks to support sustainable development.
At international level, we have joined the Geo-Human Planet Initiative to advance the integration of AI and geospatial tools into policy cycles. For instance, we propose the methods to leverage nighttime light data collected by our SDSat-1 satellite, which is freely available to validate subnational economic activity reports, thereby enhancing the accuracy and transparency of regional development assessments. At national level, we support countries in embedding big data into SDG monitoring. In China, we collaborate with Ministry of Natural Resources to integrate our CBAS global land cover data and impervious surface data, the geospatial data with high accuracy into their national environmental and land use surveys. At a local level, we developed urban SDG platforms to fuse sensor data, satellite data, and AI tools to predict disaster risks and to directly inform local city resilience plans. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Lin, for the perspective. Let's go back to Martin for a question again about capacity. And what are the most significant gaps in data literacy, technical expertise, and institutional capacity that hinders the effective use of data-driven tools for sustainable development? And how can international collaboration, knowledge sharing networks, and targeted capacity building programs be leveraged to address these gaps and build resilient, adaptive data ecosystems across levels?
Thanks, Michela. Yeah, I mean, it's a very important question, and I think capacity gaps here can be described or interpreted in very different ways. I mean, starting with the lack of sort of adequate statistical capacity for things like SDG monitoring, particular skills deficits may be particularly found in certain groups. I mean, we cite a kind of example of in our current strategy of something like 3 in 4 young people lack kind of data economy skills, or the skills needed to actually work with data. So that's at an individual level, and then I suppose this idea of kind of institutional capacity, where there may be things like fragmentation of data or information systems across and between institutions, or even this idea that you know, through organizations like we have on the panel here who collaborate internationally, there may be capacity gaps in terms of how international actors and other stakeholders coordinate, which yeah, lead to kind of fragmented efforts or duplicated investments when it comes to trying to build and sustain that capacity. So I probably in how do we address these gaps? Again, I'll probably just draw on an example or some ambitions that GEO has in its approach to supporting greater Earth intelligence, or again, this marrying of kind of Earth observation data and traditional local knowledge. And it's really in the approach in sort of co-producing data and tools and services to try and address this capacity. So working across multiple disciplines, trying to integrate new technologies, but ultimately not trying to do these things sequentially, but simultaneously. So I think for GEO, when we're talking about developing new data tools and services, there's an ambition, and in a very recent example, as we're developing a new service on urban heat risk information data, it's about baking in or building in capacity development in the design of the tools and the data themselves. So we've held a very recent workshop convening stakeholders from local governments, from national governments, data providers, technology providers, with the point of trying to understand how decisions are being made, data-informed decisions are being made in the context of heat in urban settings, and through sort of conversations with local stakeholders who are ultimately trying to make those decisions, understand the kind of capacity constraints they face, and ensuring that the sort of data and information solution to or enhancement to how they make decisions reflects the local context. So not just things like what is the local climate in a particular situation, or local level of economic development or governance structures, but really trying to understand the sort of individual and institutional capacity constraints and the kind of systems and processes that these decisions are being made in, so that we can design appropriate data and information systems collaboratively to kind of work best in the context in which we find ourselves working.
Thank you, Mark, for bringing in this perspective from GEO. I'm now turning to Lin to ask her about what role do multi-stakeholder partnership play in strengthening data ecosystems, and can you provide examples of successful collaborations in this field, please?
Yes, first I would believe that multi-stakeholder partnerships are critical to building robust, inclusive, and sustainable data ecosystems. And the CBUS experience also demonstrates how strategic partnerships translate data into tangible impacts. For example, our partnership with FAO enabled the sustainable deployment of crop system in African countries, and this improved their agriculture productivity forecasting capabilities. In addition, we established and also lead the Digital Belt and Road program, and its framework. We provided big Earth observation data as well as big data solutions to advance sustainable development in countries along the Belt and Road region. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Lin. We now move to the last two questions here. It's going to be a bit more dynamic. We will ask two panelists the same question to really have a couple of perspectives on the same topic. The first one goes to Ngozi and Aishat. So should government prioritize investing in local data and research capacity over global tools and data frameworks? Can you share some example from your country or institution? Ngozi, please, and then Aishat. Let me unmute you again. Okay. Ngozi first.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for the question. Yes, for us in Nigeria, the Nigerian government should actually prioritize investing in local data and research capacity, not as a substitute, but in complement to global data tools and frameworks. The strength of local system actually lies in their relevance. It lies in the ownership and also lies in sustainability. And these are critical for effective and inclusive policy making. I say that because the local data and the research capacity matters for us in Nigeria in these areas. First, in contextual accuracy. The local data reflects Nigeria's diverse social, economic, environmental, and even the cultural realities. But imported models without local grounding often fails to deliver the impact. Again, locally managed systems provide, I believe, faster and more accessible data to policymakers, to researchers, and communities than the global data sets. In essence, local generation and use of data foster public trust and buy-in, particularly at state and community levels. I also believe that for sustainability, we have to do that because strong local ecosystems will enable Nigeria to independently track the SDG progress. It will also track definitely the response to crisis and even the help to develop adaptive and homegrown solutions. Now to give examples of what I'm trying to say. The National Bureau of Statistics and the local partnerships have done a lot. The Nigerian Living Standards Survey, actually developed by the NBS in collaboration with academic and other civil society partners, offers tailored insights into households, into poverty, and also enables more accurate tracking of probably multidimensional poverty. It also targets implementation of programs like the National Social Investment Program. Unlike global poverty thresholds, the NLSS really captures the nuances of informal economics and community realities. So local global synergy is actually needed, not either or. So with the global tools like the Earth Observation Platform or the degree of urbanization frameworks really provide valuable macro insights, but they must be calibrated with the local data and then guarded by the national experience to be truly actionable. And my thought and my conclusion on this is that for Nigeria's development agenda and also for the SDG implementation to succeed, both local data and research capacity must form the foundation. This, I believe, empowers institutions. It will also help to promote evidence-based policies and ensures global tools that serve local needs effectively. The government, I believe very sincerely, should therefore invest robustly in building this foundation while strategically engaging with global data innovations. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Ngozi. Same perspective from Aishat on the relation between global and local data, perspectives from the Maldives. The floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that I cannot agree more with what Ngozi has said. It's very true, even in our case. So we believe that investing in sustainable local data and research capacity is like very important, and it's given a very high priority, at least especially in the case for the Maldives Bureau of Statistics. The work we do, we try to do a lot to try and build our local capacity. So right now, we find that our capacity to undertake high quality local research, the statistical education and training opportunities, these are really limited in our country, especially in the local islands, the councils. And so retaining qualified experienced staff is also another challenge that we are facing with the institutions of the government, even in the statistical system. So what, in order to address this, what we are trying to do is to, we have come up with a National Statistical Capacity Development and Research Center that we are starting to institutionalize in our Statistics Bureau. So the objective is to try and aim to provide statistical training and to agencies in the statistical system, local level, like councils, as well as to try and strengthen local research capacity. And also we need to strengthen the capacity to use this big data and new data sources to try and produce official statistics in a sustainable manner through these initiatives. So that is one area that that type of actions that we are trying to deal with it, to try and build local capacity. And another thing is we have come up with a National Statistical Research Agenda on Big Data for SDGs, which includes several initiatives to explore use of innovative data sources to fill the critical data gaps, like use of mobile phone data for population estimates, mobility and migration, which is a high priority area included in our research agenda. And for this, we are now trying to work with the Data for Now initiative as our partner, and together with the local communication authority, the mobile phone operators. But this initiative also, what was mostly highlighted by these agencies is they want to do it on their own. So the interest is to build their capacity so that we can together do these things on our own. So these are some of the things like surveys and censuses, these type of data. Now we have more capacity to do these things on our own, but addressing these new data sources and deriving more complicated indicators are more challenging and require more capacity in the countries like us. So these experience sharing sessions among Data for Now countries, these are some of the things that help countries to smooth this journey and to help build capacity, because there are some good practices, use cases that you can already refer to try and build upon that, to try and build more capacity for local research. So that's what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll move to Ngozi and Martin for the last question, that is about data ownership. So is the global development community doing enough to shift data ownership and authorship to the global south? Or are we overestimating the capacity and political will of national and local institutions to support data-driven decisions? Ngozi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this question. In short, I would say progress has been made, but not enough, and often not in the right way. I stand to be corrected, but I have my points. What is working now? First, initiatives like Data for Now or the Paris 21 and the UN World Data Forum have elevated Global South voices and capacity needs. So there's growing recognition. There's also capacity building efforts. These are increasing collaboration with national statistical offices, the local universities that we have, and also CSOs in Africa, particularly in Nigeria. I think they have that in Asia also and in Latin America. And of course, it also have had stronger discourse on data equity. What I mean is the idea of ending data colonialism is gaining traction. However, these efforts are still largely symbolic or donor-driven. So with true ownership and the authorship often remaining in the hands of external actors. So are we really overestimating local capacity like Michelle has just said and political will? I would say yes, but in part. Capacity gaps that we have is that many national systems, for example, in Nigeria, lack consistent funding. They lack skilled personnel and, of course, modern infrastructure for real-time disaggregated or geospatial data. And, of course, in the academia, these institutions are often underfunded and sidelined from data governance. And that's why I said it's just in part. And then if you look at the political and institutional barriers, data actually suppresses a lot. And there is reluctance to publish politically sensitive information. And this remains very common. And of course, weak interagency collaborations and limited enforcement of open data laws also hinder progress. So what do we need to shift? One, from extraction to co-creation. This involves local researchers as equal partners, not just data collectors, no. Secondly, I believe that funding local institutions directly is important. Let us not bypass intermediaries when possible to build sustainable systems. I also think that we should look into moving away from short-term metrics towards a long-term system building. And that goes into what we may refer to as reforming donor incentives. And lastly, in that area of the needs to shift is strengthening regional collaboration, like the South-South learning that we have had, for example, the ECOWAS and AU networks. They offer more context, which is appropriate solutions. And I think that is okay. And I thought about that. I said, well, the global development community is on the right path, definitely, but not yet at the right pace or depth. So to shift power meaningfully, we must, of a necessity, be realistic about local limitations without using them as excuses. And instead, we should use them as a target for sustained reform and strategic support. The goal for all of us is a future where the Global South owns its data, where we own our authors' insight, and of course, leading them into our own development narrative with confidence and evidence. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Ngozi, for this perspective. Let's now move to Martin for his perspective as well.
Well, I think Ngozi probably just said it all, but I would tend to agree with her in a very large part that I think even from Geo's experience over the last 20 years, like there have been some positive signs in terms of making progress on things like data sovereignty, but it does remain a challenge. And I think it's probably fair to say that still a large part of data and research specifically about the Global South is often still collected, analysed and authored in the Global North. So it's partly about access, but also about who's controlling research agendas, who's authoring insights, who's benefiting. A couple of examples from Geo's perspective anyway of how we're trying to shift that focus. And again, I would agree with Ngozi here. It's a couple of the kind of phrases that are very front and center in our current strategies all around the co-design and co-production of data, of information, of tools and services built off Earth observation data in particular, plus also this idea of kind of strengthening regional collaboration and ownership, and also the fact that when we're talking about things like capacity, this is kind of about trying to create sustained capacity locally. So maybe starting with that. So some of our programs, one important flagship program on land degradation monitoring, GeoLDN, has been set up now with sort of an established program of master's and PhD programs, scholarships. So as well as producing interesting data on land degradation and monitoring, also supporting the training of the next generation of scientists, data scientists, spatial data scientists, based in and working directly with affected regions. The other thing around regional collaboration is Geo has a very decentralized structure, if you like, in that although we have an international global secretariat based here in Geneva, we also have regional partnerships in Africa, in the Americas, Asia Pacific and Europe. And these are really fora where local researchers, data providers, data users have an opportunity to come together, set their own strategic priorities for developing data, developing research tools and systems, and not just sort of an extension of the global program here, but actually very much located and centralized within the regions that ultimately use the data. Thanks, Michele.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks to all the panelists. The chat of our event has been very lively. I'd like to pick at least one of the questions that appeared there, as we have touched upon different types of data, geospatial data, Earth observation, coming from different domains. And one of the questions was, how can interoperability between environmental, social, and economic data systems be improved to support integrated sustainability policies? I would cast this question to the panelists. Feel free to have what can I say, a lightning reply. To whom feels most interested in going?
I'll have a short go. And it's not a very exciting answer, but one of the things that Geo is certainly trying to do in terms of driving interoperability, particularly between different sectors, and this idea of needing to, you know, facilitate dialogue, interaction between different sectors, whether it's Earth observation specialists, socioeconomists, environmental managers, is really through things like promoting the FAIR principles, the findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable principles, which is all about, you know, consistently describing metadata in standardized formats, clear licensing. As I say, it's not super exciting topic for most, but it is something that makes the difference between different data systems and different data providers and users being able to talk directly to one another.
Great. Any other feedbacks from panelists or from Mark? Otherwise, I would give the floor to Mariam.
Thank you so much, Michele. Thank you to all of our esteemed panelists. That was a very informative and rich discussion. I wish we had more time. Maybe we need to organize a part 2. I know I have a lot of questions. The questions in the Q&A box in the chat are also really great ones. So I think what we'll try to do is send a follow-up email, share some links so that everyone is connected and can continue this conversation offline. I'm going to, as promised, try to share the word cloud with everyone. Let's see if this works. Just to kind of show, let me see if I can do like a full screen presentation. Hopefully that's working. So as you can see, I think some of the most common responses were informed, evidence, open, multidimensional, all very important to consider in terms of how we design and develop our future work. Were there any final comments or interventions from anyone before we wrap up the session? Great. Thank you again so much for your contribution and your time. Oh, Mark, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I just wanted, I didn't manage to raise my hand quick enough before when Michele was taking that last question, but just one comment from my side. And Martin made several references to the geo strategy that was adopted a couple of years ago now. And the Earth intelligence part there is really about this idea of bringing together socioeconomic and Earth observation data and looking at that. And as I was listening to the interventions from all of the panelists, one idea on really fostering interoperability between these different sources of data is really, I mean, we talked a lot about co-creation and how this is done. And I heard a lot of the panelists talk about, for example, relations with national statistics officers and organizations. And I think if we can get to a point where that relationship is also about coordinating the sampling activities that they do, both as they're obtaining official statistics on the more socioeconomic aspects together with the geophysical aspects that are then linked, of course, to the Earth observation properties, then we will make a step forward. So that co-creation is not only about developing the eventual products, but also on the sampling of data and how, for example, we're gathering census data or things like this. So I feel it's often been that they have their methods and then they look and think, okay, how can Earth observation support these activities? But if we really kind of looked at it at a more fundamental level, how these different data collection and observation activities can be coordinated so that then we can create more integrated, interoperable products which are merging that kind of geophysical and socioeconomic domain. Anyway, that was just a comment based on what I heard from the panelists. Thanks.
Thank you so much for ending this session on a strong note. I think there's a lot of work ahead of us in terms of connecting the wonderful organizations and experts that are not only on this panel, but also those in the audience who have joined us. We'll be sending out a follow-up email. We'll post some updates through our social media accounts, so stay tuned. we'll be in touch and find ways to continue this conversation. Thank you once again for joining us, and I wish everyone a very productive, high-level political forum. Bye, everyone.